Hey everyone, hope you're doing amazing. I want to read a chapter from the book of okay, Dr. Joe Dispenza, and the book is called Break the Habit of Being Yourself. And I didn't ask him for permission. I'm just gonna assume that he will be okay with it because as I feel him to be when I see him in interviews and when I listen to his talks, he is very much bent on, I think you say it that way, getting everyone to live their best life. I highly recommend the book to anyone who wants to understand changing themselves, how it is, why it is you feel uncomfortable, literally uncomfortable in your body when you try to make changes, even if those changes are positive and good for you, or maybe especially, I don't know, depends on the type of person you've been being. Then it's going to get uncomfortable. And I talked about this before in a video, and you need, or you don't need, but it's how I work. When I understand how things work, it's easier for me to stick with it. Everyone is different, but this is just how I tick. So I posted a video on how to quantum jump easily, and I will link it in the description. And this is actually the explanation behind what I'm telling there, because I say in this video, do things that you're uncomfortable doing and you will literally feel uncomfortable in your body, and that's where the gold is. And here Dr. Joe Dispenza just gives arguments for why my video is so amazing. Yeah, let's get into it. So it's from chapter 3, and this part is called Guilty Until Proven Innocent. Let's use a real-life situation to illustrate what happens when we decide to break from some memorized emotional state and change our minds. I think we can all relate to one common state of being: guilt. So I'm going to use that to illustrate in practical terms how this cycle of thinking and feeling works against us. Then we'll identify some of the efforts the brain-body system is going to make to remain in control and preserve that negative state of being. Imagine that you frequently feel guilty about one thing or another. If something goes wrong in a relationship, a simple miscommunication, someone unreasonably misplacing his or her anger on you, or whatever, you wind up taking the blame and feeling bad. Picture yourself as one of those people who repeatedly say or think, "It was my fault." After 20 years of doing this to yourself, you feel guilty and think guilty thoughts automatically. You have created an environment of guilt for yourself, and other factors have contributed to this. But for now, let's stay with this notion of how your thinking and feeling have created your state of being and your environment. Every time you think a guilty thought, you've signaled your body to produce the specific chemicals to make up the feeling of guilt. You've done this so often that your cells are swimming in a sea of guilt chemicals. The receptor sites on your cells adapt so that they can better take in and process this particular chemical expression, that of guilt. The enormous amount of guilt bathing the cells begins to feel normal to them, and eventually what the body perceives as normal starts to be interpreted as pleasurable. It's like living for years near an airport. You get so used to the noise that you no longer hear it consciously, unless one jet flies lower than usual and the roar of its engines is so much louder that it gets your attention. The same thing happens to your cells. As a result, they literally become desensitized to the chemical feeling of guilt. They will require a stronger, more powerful emotion from you, a higher threshold of stimuli to turn on the next time. And when that stronger hit of guilt chemicals gets the body's attention, your cells perk up at the stimulation, much like that first cup of Java feels to a coffee drinker. And when each cell divides at the end of its life and makes a daughter cell, the receptor sites on the outside of the new cell will require a higher threshold of guilt to turn them on. Now the body demands a stronger emotional rush of feeling bad in order to feel alive. You become addicted to guilt by your own doing. So let's stop here for a second and feel what Dr. Joe Dispenza is saying here and what he's claiming. So yes, we mostly, we create everything, and all of our contacts are first in framework 2, as Seth explains that. We're first non-physical. We are mind, we are thoughts, and then everything becomes physical. And we still have a physical body. I mean, look down, you can see your legs. Hopefully you have them. And that was not such a nice joke. But okay, yeah. So you can still see your legs, your hands, So you're also a physical body. Also, not only, or you have one, however you want to see it or say it. So, what he is saying is correct. The physical body is an antenna. And actually a programmed antenna. We programmed this antenna to automatically behave and react and feel comfortable to things we have been thinking constantly. Because the thing is this, I'm not sure if you already heard me say this in the beginning, but he talks about this in the book anyway, is that whenever you have a thought, the body makes a chemical there's a chemical reaction going on in the body. So the body becomes a set of chemical reactions of the mind. And since the body is an antenna, it tunes into situations, into people, into experiences that it is, projecting? That it's signaling. So an antenna can only catch the radio station it's tuned on. So really feel this to be true. Read the book yourself or listen to this again and again and again until you feel the truth of it, because this is where the gold is at. Understand how we work as a mechanism, as a human mechanism. Because we're also soul, we're also intangible, and we're more soul than anything else. But these are the rules of the game on planet Earth. And if you want to play the game nice and you want to win in your version of your reality, then you better learn the rules of the game. Okay, let's go on. When anything goes wrong or is awry in your life, you automatically assume that you're the guilty party. But that seems normal to you now. You don't even have to think about feeling guilty. You just are that way. Not only is your mind not conscious of how you express your guilty state by the way of the things you say and do, but your body wants to feel its accustomed level of guilt because that's what you have trained it to do. You have become unconsciously guilty most of the time, and your body has become the mind of guilt. I'm going to repeat that last part. So not only is your mind not conscious of how you express your guilty state by way of the things you say and do, but your body wants to feel its accustomed level of guilt, because that's what you have trained it to do. You have become unconsciously guilty most of the time. Your body has become the mind of guilt. Before I go on, I want you to know and really feel that this is not about the blame game. Like, nah, 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 you put this all on yourself. So now go sulk in a corner and feel crap about your life. No, not at all. This is just information. These are the rules of the game, and the whole game of life is about having a joyful and amazing experience. And while sometimes you might feel like you're in a bad movie, I know that I have felt this way sometimes. It is still a movie, it is still a game, it is still meant to be a beautiful and joyful experience. So all of this is not to start some kind of a blame game. So please do not make it and take it this way, okay? Okay. Yeah. Only when, say, a friend points out that you needn't have apologized to the store clerk for giving you the wrong change, do you realize how pervasive this aspect of your personality has become? Let's say that this triggers one of those moments of enlightenment, an epiphany, and you think, she's right. Why do I apologize all the time? Why do I take responsibility for everyone else's missteps? After you reflect on your history of constantly pleading guilty, you say to yourself, today I'm going to stop blaming myself and making excuses for other people's behavior. I am going to change. And because of your decision, you're no longer going to think the same thoughts that produce the same feelings and vice versa. And if you falter, you've made a deal with yourself that you're going to stop and remember your intention. 2 hours go by and you feel really good about yourself. You think, wow, this is actually working. Unfortunately, your body's cells aren't feeling so good. Over the years, you've trained them to demand more molecules of emotion, guilt in this case, in order to fulfill their chemical needs. You had trained your body to live as a memorized chemical continuity, but now you're interrupting that, denying it its chemical needs and going contrary to its subconscious programs. The body becomes addicted to guilt or any emotion in the same way that it would get addicted to drugs. At first, you only need a little of the emotion/drug in order to feel it, and then your body becomes desensitized and your cells require more and more of it just to feel the same again. Trying to change your emotional pattern is like going through drug withdrawal. Trying to change your emotional pattern is like going through drug withdrawal. One more time, because this is so amazing what he's saying here. Trying to change your emotional pattern is like going through drug withdrawal. So whenever you try to change your self-image and you feel extremely uncomfortable in your body, you want to cry, scream, punch someone or something, yeah, it's not so weird, because that's what happens when you stop giving yourself the drug that you're used to. Once your cells are no longer getting the usual signals from the brain about feeling guilty, they begin to express concern. Before, the body and the mind were working together to produce this state of being called guilt. Now you're no longer thinking and feeling and thinking in the same way. Your intention is to produce more positive thoughts, but the body is still all revved up to produce feelings of guilt based on guilty thoughts. Think of this as kind of a highly specialized assembly line. Your brain has programmed the body to expect one part that will fit into this larger assembly. And all of a sudden, you've sent it another part that doesn't fit into the space where the old guilty part once did. An alarm goes off and the whole operation comes to a standstill. I love this metaphor. Your cells are always spying on what is happening in the brain and the mind. Your body is the best mind reader ever. So they all stop what they're doing, look upward to the brain and think, what are you doing up there? You insisted on being guilty, and we loyally followed your commands for years. We subconsciously memorized a program of guilt from your repetitive thoughts and feelings. We changed our receptor sites to reflect your mind, modified our chemistry so that you could automatically feel guilty. We have maintained your internal chemical order, independent of any external circumstances in your life. We're so used to the same chemical order that your new state of being feels uncomfortable, unfamiliar. We want the familiar, the predictable, and what feels natural. And all of a sudden you're going to change? We can't have that. Okay, just a second here. Like, what he sketches here is, of course, to explain this to people that might read this for the first time and hear about these concepts for the first time. And to be honest, I think it's a bit negative because it's almost like, yeah, well, everything is against us and even our body is against us. And maybe you interpret it different, but that's how I kind of feel it. So it would serve you better to really know and feel that you are your best cheerleader. You are your best friend. You are your mother, father, brother, sister, whoever, lover. You're everything to you, and your body is that too. And the fact that you're hearing this means that you're ready for the next step. Otherwise, you would not be hearing this. And if it's not now, it will definitely work in the back of your brain or your subconscious mind or in your body or wherever. And at one point, you will be ready. So you are also your own cheerleader, not just a bunch of chemicals that is sometimes signaling things out into the world that you better not. So please also know that. Okay, let's go on. So the cells huddle up and say, let's send a protest message to the brain. But we have to be sneaky because we want her to think that she's actually responsible for these thoughts. We don't want her to know they came from us. So now the cells send a message marked urgent, right up the spinal cord to the surface of the thinking brain. I call that the fast track because the message goes straight up the central nervous system in a matter of seconds. And at the same time this is happening, the chemistry of the body, the chemistry of guilt, is now at a lower level because you're not thinking and feeling the same way. But this drop does not go unnoticed. A thermostat in the brain, called the hypothalamus, also sends out an alarm that says, chemical values are going down, we gotta make more. So the hypo thing signals the thinking brain to revert back to its old habitual ways. This is the slow track because it takes longer for the chemicals to circulate through the bloodstream. The body wants you to return to your memorized chemical self, so it influences you to think in familiar, routine ways. The body's just trying to keep you safe. These fast track and slow track cellular responses occur simultaneously. And the next thing you know, you start to hear the chatter of thoughts like these in your head. You're too tired today. You can start tomorrow. Tomorrow's a better day. Really, you can do it later. And my favorite one, this doesn't feel right. That's actually Dr. Joe's favorite one, not my favorite one. If that doesn't work, a second sneak attack occurs. The body-mind wants to be in control again. So it starts picking on you a bit. It's okay for you to feel a little bad right now. It's your father's fault. Don't you feel bad about what you did in your past? In fact, let's take a look at your past so we can remember why you are this way. Look at you. You're a mess, a loser. You're pathetic and weak. Your life is a failure. You'll never change. You're too much like your mother. Why don't you just quit? As you continue this awfulizing, the body is tempting the mind to return to the state it has unconsciously memorized on a rational level. And that is absurd. But obviously, on some level, it feels good to feel bad. Okay, I'm gonna stop here. This is enough. Moral of the story, and when you think of it, when you look at it from a distance, I mean, how incredibly intelligent are we? The body doesn't feel okay, and even has the mind produce thoughts, or the brain produce thoughts to back up what the body wants. And this can work both ways, right? You can also have the body work for you. And that is what all this conscious creation is about. So, I trust that you understand it more, how it works. And I also trust that you now understand that whenever you feel uncomfortable when you're trying to change yourself, your self-image, your concept of self, that it's not so weird that it happens. And this is the explanation behind it. So, as promised, I'll put the link in the description to my Change Easily into a different parallel reality, a different timeline. Quantum jumping is another word for it. And I will see you in here very soon. I wish you a wonderful day. Ciao!